I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Abington School Committee for Tuesday, October 24th. We are at the Abington Middle High School Library, and it is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to notify everyone before we even get started. There will be a public hearing on school choice participation for the 2018-19 school year to be held at 7:30. So we will leave the session of the regular session and go to the public hearing and then come back to regular session. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and could everyone please rise to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it's time for hearing of visitors. Do we have any visitors that would like to be heard this evening? Yes? Could you please identify yourself for the...
Yeah, Todd Russo, I'm the drive. I just wanted to let everyone know that the booster-thons are starting today. My wife Carolyn, Kate Minahan, and Pam Haley have done most of the legwork for coordination and t-shirt, raising money for the t-shirts. We got 22 local businesses, and they raised about $3,700 for that. And it's starting today. It goes through the 2nd, November 2nd. Fun runs culminating that on 11/2. Donations are now being taken, and my wife got an email right before she came in. Beaverbrook has already raised $1,800.
Tell your wife congratulations on her work.
Can I just comment for a second? So I was at both the Woodsdale and the Beaverbrook today, and it was exciting. And what's exciting about it is you're engaging students in the activity, but it's a healthy activity. I remembered a million years ago when I was a principal, we used to have the kids walk out with boxes of candy bars, which is not near as good as what you're doing. So thank you.
And actually, the two goals are $1,500 or $15,000 for each school. And I heard that you're going to ride a tricycle in all the classrooms.
Which is better than being duct taped.
And it's going to be videotaped while you're doing that? Okay, thank you.
And also a full list of all the volunteers that have helped out, because there's other people doing other things, helping out behind the scenes, and there's going to be a lot of people helping like the fun runs themselves, so there'll be a whole list of everyone who helped and volunteered. So they'll come up with it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And in previous years, the money raised went directly into technology for students, which our kids benefit tremendously from. So it's a win all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything that they'd like to contribute? Okay. Reading and approval of records of the minutes for September 26, 2017. Does anyone have any comments, questions, changes, corrections? If not, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of September 22nd, 2017 as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Just one absent and one abstain. Moving on to the report of the Superintendent of Schools. Peter.
Under my section, the first item we have is the opportunity to have a cooperative girls hockey team with Rockland and Hull. This has been something that's been Peter, Serino, and Casey have been looking at over a year, 2 years now. There's been an interest in it for longer than that. Peter's going to do a better job of explaining the intricacies behind it than I am. We don't have a place set up for Peter.
I'll go down that.
Why don't you could just pull a chair over to the end.
In your packet, you have a handout explaining some of it. Peter's going to walk us through it and answer any questions people have. Not looking for approval at this time because it's a club experience. Hopefully, if it goes successfully, and all goes well, Peter would be back at some point in the future to ask for the approval of it to be a sport at one point.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just a little background. The way that we add programs is it's generated by student interest. So as this committee is aware, over the past several years, we've added a cooperative wrestling program with Rockland, girls volleyball this year, and previously we moved ultimate frisbee from a club to a varsity sport. So we've explored other sports over the past couple of years, but we haven't quite gotten to this point because the interest meetings, the interest just was not there when we held it after school. So over the past couple of years, we've had some students express some interest in playing hockey on the female side. So we began to explore some different options and try and come up with the best fit for our girls. Almost all of the girls that are interested have never played organized hockey. Of the, I'll explain a little bit more about the numbers later, but 9 girls followed through with everything through the process, and only 2 of them have played organized hockey before. So we thought it was really important that we had kind of a homegrown program where the girls would have an opportunity to learn the game and the skills associated with the sport, and they weren't just thrown on a team that was already well established, and they wouldn't really have an opportunity to learn the fundamentals the way that they will with this. So in reaching out to other towns, this idea started with Rockland. It kind of made sense. Most of our hockey players, both male and female, play youth hockey with the children of Rockland, and there is a core group that's rising through the school system now of females that play hockey together. So I reached out to Gary Graziano, the Rockland Athletic Director, about 2 years ago, and we started to lay the groundwork to get to this point today. And concern over numbers, if we would actually have enough numbers between the 2 towns, was there. So we reached out to Hull, who also has a couple of girls. So the 3 of us are all exploring it together. The costs the first year would be shared. It would be a club sport. Our students would pay the regular athletic user fee, which is pretty standard with how we've done things in the past. And then the cost between the 3 towns would be divided evenly this year, and then we would revisit it next year to see, did somebody only have 1 girl participate? Did somebody have, 15? And we would kind of look at it in that sense. The idea is we would get them on the ice an average of about 2 times a week, and we would try and play an abbreviated schedule against other towns' JV teams. The idea is we would probably start their games a little bit later. Most winter sports start their games the 2nd week of December. We'd be shooting for probably January, so they'd have a little bit longer preseason where they could learn the game a little bit. And most JV teams play in the neighborhood of 16 games. Some sports play a little bit more, some a little bit less. So we would shoot to get them, 6 to 8 game schedule somewhere in there. So in addition to the 2 sheets of ice that they would have each week, they would hopefully have a couple of games. We would also try and get the girls together at least 1 day a week for dry land practice, where they could perhaps utilize our fitness center or a gymnasium or a classroom to kind of learn the game a little bit as they go. We thought that would make a lot of sense to start and build it that way, and then progress towards a varsity program. We'd be open to it as early as next year, but if we're being more realistic with the sport and the level our girls are currently at, probably a couple years away. So with that information, we shared in our announcements in various forms of communication to have an interest meeting. So I held an interest meeting here in the library, and we had about 20 girls show up who were interested. A lot of them were just interested, and then once they found out that sometimes hockey practices before school early in the morning, or that you actually need to know how to skate to play. Some of them said, it's not for me. But at that meeting, there was a brief 2 questions that they had to fill out and just return a slip to express their interest and show that they were actually committed. And we had 9 girls return that. I would imagine there's probably a couple that just, forgot and might play. And Rockland has also had their meeting, and they had about 5 or 6 girls, and we're waiting on Hull. So the goal is to get this off the ground this year. We have tentatively scheduled a couple sheets of ice, which is the challenge. But I have a meeting next Friday where hopefully we'll start to get some more answers. So that's kind of how we got to this point and what we're hoping to do going forward.
Couple of questions, Peter. How many girls do you need to have a team?
That's a good question. I would say 15 would be tight. That would be on the
Be like
low
the
end.
minimum would
The
be 15?
minimum, and that's tight.
Yeah.
I'd say ideally you're looking for more in the 18 to 20 range,
Okay.
if not more. I don't know if Superintendent Schaefer has a little more experience with hockey.
I think you're
Hey, ask the wrong
spot on with that answer.
The other question I had, the girls are all paying the $175 athletic user fee, and we all know that ice time is expensive. What do you anticipate for costs?
So the costs I anticipate, based off of that basic breakdown, if all 3 towns are involved, we'd be looking at just shy of $6,000 would be Abington's share. And then obviously some of that would be offset by the user fees. One thing I think is important to keep in mind is every student will not necessarily represent one user fee. Some students will receive the waiver. And then if for some reason one of the other 2 towns were not able to participate and we could move forward, that would increase to closer to $8,000 to $9,000.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Peter?
I do. Oh, go ahead, Mike. No?
So for the boys program now, because it is a varsity sport and they have a JV team as well, if I
We do
recall.
not currently have a JV with our boys program. We have not had the numbers to do so.
Okay. Do they drive themselves to practices? I was just reading through this.
Yeah.
So they drive themselves to practice. It'll be the same thing
Or the
you mentioned.
parents.
Or the parents, so the
Yep,
girls will
so
be
they
doing
would
the
be
same thing.
responsible for wherever we designate as their home, as a home rink, they're responsible for getting themselves to.
That's a similar condition in other towns.
What's that?
Yeah.
We're starting it as a club, Pete. Are we looking for someone, an advisor or an actual coach that has some experience?
It's a great question. So we're looking for somebody that has experience, and actually the Rockland public school system has a couple teachers in the school system with experience coaching hockey or playing women's hockey that we are hoping will be on board.
So we don't have anybody from Abington that would,
Nope, so the job would be posted by one of the towns would work out that they'd be the responsible party. So for example, with our co-op agreement with Rockland, Rockland actually posts the position and they technically hire with ARC. We consult with them, I'm involved in the process, but they're technically a Rockland public school employee because they're the host school. Their coaches still go through the same background checks over here and everything. So we anticipated doing it in a similar fashion.
Anyone else have any questions?
Nope.
If I could just for a second thank Peter for the work on this, because this has evolved from a lot of different proposals with schools that I don't think would have been a good fit for us to rinks that were far away for us, and at the same time there was an interest that we wanted to satisfy, especially with our young ladies, because we need to encourage more of them to be, student athletes and grow our participation rate for them. And this is a lot more common sense for our students than where we started, and I appreciate the work.
Thank you. And just one last thing I wanted to note is why this is particularly appealing to us is it's a winter female sport, which is relatively limited for us. We have explored in the past winter track and swimming, and we didn't quite get to this point. I'm hoping this works out, but we didn't even get to this point with those. We had an interest meeting and would have 4 or 5 kids show up. So that's a particular area that we've been looking to add, so this would be exciting for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Do you want to
All right.
continue on? You want to come back?
We will come back to the Abington Public Schools participation in the school choice at 7:30. So we can move on to C. Do you want-
Do you want to do that?
Okay. According to our schedule for, I'll put it somewhere. According to our schedule for Peter's evaluation, this is the month he was to present us with his self-evaluation for us to begin his evaluation. However, the state, thank you, I did
was
print that out,
slow.
I have it in here. We purposely set up the schedule for the superintendent's evaluation so that we would have the results of the MCAS tests as part of the process. Some schools do it in the spring. We chose to do it from January to January so that we would have those in place. This month, Peter was scheduled to submit his self-evaluation, which he has given me a copy of, but it has blanks because the state held off on releasing the MCAS results, so we are again finding ourselves behind. Peter has asked if we could put it off for a month so that he had that information in there. I don't have a problem with it as long as we don't fall too far behind and we can try to catch up within the cycle at some point in time. I wanted to know how the rest of the committee felt about that.
I think one of the major reasons we moved it was so that we get the MCAS results in there, so I think we should give Peter the month.
Okay, so we will postpone that, and next month we will do Peter will turn in his self-evaluation.
Thank you. Just so people know, they were released just last week, and if I'm going to be responsible about understanding and moving forward with the information, you don't want it crammed in 3 days across all tested areas and grade levels, subject areas, and subgroups. So I'll be back.
Thank you. I have a copy of it right here, minus the MPS information. Moving on, reconfiguration update.
So there have been a number of questions along the way about reconfiguration. We've provided some updates here and there. Committee member Chris Coyle raised some good questions about kids getting home in the evening. We've had our meetings here and parents have asked some questions about it. So we thought it would be a healthy thing for us to do, just to walk through some of the things that are going on, planning behind the scenes, updates, just give people information on reconfiguration. So this won't be an all-inclusive summary of all of the things that have happened, but it's topical based on some of the things that are going on the ground right now. So we've talked quite a bit about start times and how we wanted to, and about how we have a tiered bus transportation system. So the same buses are used at multiple levels for our kids. People know that well. One of the things we wanted to do this year is get our schedules in place with our middle school and our high school in the same building and get a feel for how can we best maximize efficiencies with teaching staffs and schedules, and in doing that provide a better program for students. And one of the things we're doing right now with the scheduling committee with that is learning how we might be able to manipulate that schedule and the reason and our start times. So for example, right now you know that the high school goes very early and then the middle school comes in one period later. And that has an impact on the Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale schools because there's a 6.5-hour day for students at this building and there's a 6-hour day for students at the elementary level. And so it pushed back those start times and dismissal times at the Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale. So one of the things we hope to do, but I can't tell you until it's done, is come back with a different proposal that moves those start times up for the Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale. That would involve changing the middle school start time for next year. We wouldn't want to make that change now, but those conversations are taking place behind the scenes in terms of our planning. Felicia's going to have to help me this when we get into some of the other information, because we discovered, though, we could make improvements this year, and Felicia has been a part of those. We had one of our meetings and we discovered that the middle school students were going to their lockers at the end of the day, and it took about 10 minutes for the middle school students to get dismissed to the buses. Whereas if they have their materials and their supplies to be dismissed in 7th period, it saves them going to their lockers before they go to the bus. That shaves 5 minutes off the dismissal time for the buses. That means the buses get to the elementary level you would think 5 minutes earlier. We think it's getting there even earlier because our buses were getting caught at this light cycle in the traffic, and they were sitting at the light 2 and 3 times. And so we believe it's getting our buses about 7 or 8 minutes earlier.
We just started it on Monday, the change at the middle school. And I was here today, and you know, part of it is pulling out of the site. And but I was here today, and as opposed to 2:58 or 3 o'clock with the buses pulling out, the last bus pulled out at 2:52. So we gained 7 minutes, and they were able to be in front of a lot of the cars that are picking up because the buses, everyone was being dismissed at the same time. So I think we'll see an improvement there. And then I ended up at Beaver Brook, and the last bus pulled in at 3:32, which is a good 8 or 9 minutes earlier than it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So.
You had another brilliant moment that you're not sharing with us about how the buses.
Oh, we also changed the order of how buses leave the middle school. The last 2 buses, and it's one of those that you have to be very careful of changing anything, because you can only change one thing at a time, because if you change more than one thing, are you creating a hard, an issue with another bus or another? So bus 6 was continuously the latest bus, and significantly later than all the other buses arriving to Beaver Brook. So we actually put number 6 at the front of the bus line, leaving the middle school. So that's helping. And so I'm debating, there's one other bus that comes in around the same time, and I'm debating moving that bus up also. But again, I want to make sure that it doesn't cascade and then create a different bus being later. But it's also a matter of where the buses go in town. I looked at those 2 routes, and they go to the far reaches of the town for the middle school, and then have to make it back. So I think it's also important in the bus issue. So the bus routes are developed over the summer, and we start those the second week in July. Carol Carney works diligently over the summer putting the bus routes together. Bus applications are due July 1st, and we always have gotten a trickle in the summer of bus applications, and those students get put on buses most of the time at established stops that were set up when we had the initial applications that were due in July. We had over 150 bus applications, 120 bus applications come in after school started. So, and that's important, and that's for a couple of reasons. I think one is the number of students that are here on the site. The Woodsdale Beaver Brook dismissal, I think, created some of that. But what that did was put more kids on those buses that we had run over the summer to make sure that they were short enough to fit in the window of time. So, instead of having 35 kids on a bus with this many stops, we might have 45 students on a bus, and had to add a few stops because we didn't have a bus that went up into a certain neighborhood. So there was I think it's fair to say, numerous factors that have created where we are today. And we also, we had looked at, do we add another bus? And what does that do? But when you have 125 students sign up for the bus, they're not all in the same neighborhood. So you have 5 on this bus, and 7 on this bus, and 10 on this bus. So adding another bus would have meant taking apart all of the bus routes and redoing them, and we could fit our students on the bus. And I think we've made those changes that, some of the changes that have made the buses arrive in a more timely fashion. It also is important to note that it takes a long time to load the buses at the Beaver Brook. And it's gotten a lot faster, but part of that is you don't call all the bus students at the same time and hope that they find their one of 10 buses out in front of the school. So 2 buses are called at a time, even when there are 2 buses are loading, 2 buses or 3 buses or 4 buses might be behind them, waiting to pull up. And as Mr. Schaefer always says, and I think we all agree, we can't afford to lose one child. So it's important that the right student gets on the right bus, and if that takes an extra minute, then that's worth it. So.
Does anyone on the committee have any
I
questions?
just have one quick one. Felicia, is there, so I don't have to fill out the bus application, we're far enough away, but is there, I know the deadline is July 1st. So they send it in after. Do you have to bus them, is the first question. I guess second, is there any kind of penalty for sending it in after July 1st?
So that's a really good question, and one that has been debated significantly among my colleagues, and
internally.
And from all of the information that I have found, you create another set of arguments.
I'd imagine,
So
yeah.
I just moved, my job changed, I didn't know, so then you might get $20 more from some people, but you're
Yeah.
creating this whole nother level of
Ill
issues.
will, almost.
So if you had
Ill will,
yeah.
you know, circumstances change, someone's job changes.
Right, why do I have to pay $20 more?
Why do I have, yeah.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
but for a late
so I just
fee.
wanted to get
right.
the
No, that's
question
a
out
great
there,
question.
so.
No, and I appreciate, I hope that answer wasn't too,
Because people do ask.
people do ask.
We'd also find that even though there was a late fee, we would have, what we've heard is the same people are showing up late in these other districts that have a late fee before they had a late fee. So you're still having that fight
Right,
anyway.
for some people, $20 doesn't matter, like, they just always forget to turn in the bus
Yeah.
application. The policy says that if we have a seat for you, we're not gonna add another bus for you if we have a
Yeah.
seat. But we also, I think we want kids to get to school, and we want to get them as soon as we can, and we also want stops to be, state laws within a mile of your house, but we try to, we do neighborhood stops that might not be what you had last year, but we didn't develop the stop when we had your application. So that's the biggest piece that I would, for many reasons, encourage people to get their bus applications in on time, but even more importantly, it definitely helps with our neighborhood stops and where the buses go.
Thanks.
Other information on the same topic, or did you want to take other questions?
Do we have just one question on this topic?
Is any significant changes to the bus route times you're gonna let that particular bus know? Because I know, like, the bus is right down the street from me, right? But
Yeah.
it's like, I'm doing stuff on my home, and like 5 minutes is 5 minutes, all of a sudden the kids are out there. So there's maybe like something, like you just said, there's like 8 or 9 minutes or something like that, just for the people that are at the beginning of the want to know that.
So we do make calls if it's, if there's a, if bus is broken down, it's gonna be 15 or 20 minutes. If there's been an incident in an earlier run and it means the bus is gonna be late. But we honestly, you could be 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late based on a construction site in town or a broken down car on the train track. I think that there's,
One of the things that happens quite often is it rains, and people wait in their cars, for example, in the morning with their kids and the windshield wipers going. And so if the bus has 35 stops to make, it takes an extra 10, 15, 20 seconds, take your pick, for each child to get out of a parked car instead of waiting at a corner and then get up into the bus, times 35 stops. And so there's no way to anticipate, where that bus would be, depending on where, at the end of the run, the bus is coming later, and it's even worse in the snow.
But even if you just mention something, if you send something out that you're working on it, everyone's gonna feel like, oh, you guys are actually being proactive about it, not just like letting it go its course.
of which.
Just let people know you're working on it, what you just.
Well, like those conditions on the road or the weather, we don't
No,
have a
you
way
just
to.
work on the bus routes that you've got,
Oh.
made some things, that you're moving some stuff around.
Yeah, I can add a little to your Beaverbrook broadcaster this week. Put a little blurb. Yep, I'll write a little blurb.
Just let people know that you're doing something, just let them know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the bus thing you talk about too is like everyone was freaking out about everything in the beginning, so I thought you'd get like 150 people next year.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this a long time, and we've never had anything like that to report, Teresa. It was a very busy few weeks with buses, and it was all new routes and all new stops, and so it was. Sorry, that was.
So if I could just talk a little bit about 201 Glenowitz and the construction at the building here. So one of the things that you know well is that we implemented a one-way route around the building. The reason that we had to do that was because the number of people coming to pick up kids required that we have a long queue line around the building. If we had the two ways on either side, two-way on the middle school side, two-way on the high school side, we don't have the room to keep to queue all the cars for the pickup and the drop off, especially in terms of what we're experiencing on the middle school side. Well beyond the volume of people driving their kids is being experienced for the middle school. And so what that's created is created a situation where kids are getting off on the passenger side of the car, which is a condition that we didn't necessarily want to have, while traffic goes on the outside, which is still safer than what we had at the Frollo Middle School, where we really had 4 lanes of traffic with the road in the middle, and then people swooping in and swooping out and picking up kids and going, and kids running through to get into cars, and I'd say a Hail Mary at dismissal, and try to slow people down, and they just don't slow down. What's going to happen in the middle of it, so this is the best condition that we can, and the safest condition that we can provide given the footprint that we have. We met with traffic engineers last week because what's going to happen is we're going to get that separate driveway for the buses up off of Glenowitz, and we're going to get a new parking area up off of Glenowitz as you enter the site. And the proposals that we're talking about include reserved spaces for the pre-K, which our parents don't have it's more difficult for them to get their kids into school because they're smaller, and so we want to give them preferred parking areas close to the pre-K. And then perhaps we would continue with the one-way condition once you get past the turf field lot, or at the turf field lot area. And the reason for that is because then we could create that 2-way condition in this lot up here just off of Glenowitz, which would keep some of the traffic from going around behind the building, but then we would be able to maintain that one-way thoroughfare and have that line for queuing when and where it's needed. But then it would be striped differently to provide more of a not a barrier, but a zone for loading and unloading. And so that's what we're thinking about right now. But that involves the appropriate signage, that involves the appropriate traffic engineer saying and telling us this is the best way to do it. And then we want to make these changes once. We don't want to make a change and then another change and then another change, because it's difficult for parents, and it's difficult for us to manage these changes because we throw many personnel out there to help marshal the traffic around the building. And I wish that we employed that many people, that we could do that every day, but if we were doing that, then those people have other jobs, other functions for kids that they should be doing in the schoolhouse. So we just don't have the staff to continue that level of directing traffic. What did I forget, Felicia? Anything? Because we've got to go into our public hearing.
I think the only other thing about 201, I could talk about it too in my section, is once we do have the parking lots, the signage will be, the things that are turned around the wrong way will be turned around, and we'll blast out information. But I think that'll also relieve the buses getting out more quickly. It'll all help with that end of the day issue.
Thank you. As you know, if anyone has any questions, there's always somebody around that will try to find the answer for you. At this point in time, now being 7:30, we need to go into our public hearing on school choice. So we need to vote to go into the public hearing to leave the regular meeting to come back to it after our public hearing. So, Wendy, yes or no?
Yes.
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 No, I say yes. So we are now in our public hearing on school choice. Peter?
So I have really good news for you. We have over 100 students this year as of the end of October, beyond what we had last year in the Abington Public Schools. The high school's seen 70 additional students. The middle school has seen 8. The Woodsdale has seen 26 additional students, for a total of 104 new students to the town of Abington. Now, when I say these are new, students come from a couple of places. They come from people that move in. This is not these students. We have some students that have moved in, but we also have students that move out. This is mostly, in the packet, you have a copy of it, if you look at that sheet that I've given you, it's mostly because students are not leaving the public school to get an education someplace else. And they're also not leaving our public school system to go as frequently to South Shore Vocational. If you look at the percentage, what happened in this last year is just over 15% opted to leave to go to South Shore Vocational or to get a private education. And you can look at the numbers yourselves. In previous years, it runs, plus or minus 2 or 3% from 30 over the years. Upper 20s, 30. So we also had a small class leave the 12th grade, and we have a large class come into the freshman class. And that's great news for the town of Abington because it means that there are more people in the community that have skin in the game. They are invested in our community, they're invested in the schools, they send their children here, and it's important and healthy for Abington. It's good for us because we're a public school, that's our job to educate those children. We also get children though from people that move into town. There are currently in Abington several hundred housing starts on the books. Those housing starts will finish at different times. There's no way of knowing what ones will finish for next year, what ones will finish for the following year. These are, when I say hundreds, it's 200, 250 on the books right now at the assessor's office. They are 3 and 4 bedroom homes. They are 2 and 3 bedroom homes and condos, and they are 1 and 2 bedroom condos. Knowing that there are that many coming, open and new places for people to live, that's the other place we're going to get new students from. So if this trend continues, that we are going to capture more of our students in the Abington Public Schools, and they're not going to be leaving us, plus we have new people coming with the new housing, my recommendation is going to be, and I don't, if people wanted to vote this tonight, we could, but my recommendation to you, after people ask whatever questions they have, is going to be that we do not involve ourselves in the choice program in Massachusetts, simply because I want to take care of our Abington residents first, and then let's see where we are next year with the students that we're taking on. That reflects between a 5% and a 6% increase. If we continue to see that trend, we need to pay attention to those Abington kids and accommodating them first. Our current class sizes, I just want to share those with people. Our highest right now is grade 6 at 27. We are in the mid-20s or low in the first, second, and third grade. We're in the low to mid-20s. Again, and then in grade 6 is the high mark at 27. At the secondary level, the class sizes are a little bit smaller per class, but that's because in order to have a competitive secondary program, you have to have a program, which means kids get spread out. So you have smaller numbers in your AP classes, and it all gets mixed in for an average. I am anticipating we're going to see at least another 20 to 30 students if we do nothing at all at Abington High School next year, because if this trend continues, we have another class that'll make that same decision. If you take the number of students leaving us from their senior year now and add in that same factor, if we do nothing at all, we're going to take on another 20 to 30 students at Abington High School. So, you want to answer any questions people might have?
Anyone on the committee?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Peter, when you talked about the number of students, when you first started, we had no new students at the EEC Beaverbrook?
We had as many move in as moved out.
So it was a wash?
It was a wash.
Okay.
Yep. So what I did is I calculated the number. If, with our current configuration, if you had that configuration last year, if you grouped the grades together the same way, we had 424 at what would have been the Beaverbrook last year, and we have 424 at the Beaverbrook now.
Yep, okay. And then, just refresh me on school choice. We Just because, first of all, how many students applied for school choice? And we take them as freshmen,
Yep.
and we own them for the rest of the thing. We don't entertain a sophomore application or a
Correct.
junior application.
We have only allowed freshmen. We have 2 students with us right now that are choice students, and you're right, we have to, once a student enters, you own them until they graduate or they decide to leave.
To leave us.
The 2 that we have are actually students who were with us and changed residence and wanted to stay with us. We've had 6 and 7 applications before, and then the deadline passes, they're accepted, and then they've opted not to come. They've made other choices in the end.
Okay. So those 2 students that we have this year, actually, they were Abington students in there.
Historically, they were.
So they continued. So
Correct.
To me, that's the right thing to do. How many did we have apply this year that wanted to come?
We had a total of 6. It was 6 or 7. One
Okay.
didn't get the application in on time, but we had 6 completed applications.
And school choice is also a choice on our end, correct?
So even if we decide to opt out of this, our residents will still have the opportunity to go to a system that has choice, if that's what your question is.
No, that's not my question.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we have the option, so we have someone that applies as a freshman, coming in as a freshman, but may have a very, poor, not academic, standing, but poor disciplinary, not in school, so we're not necessarily looking to just entertain, they've gotten thrown out of the school, now they're applying here.
It's really a blind process.
Right.
You have to take them if they want to come. Now, if they've done something dangerous where they've got a felony or charge or conviction, that would be a different story.
So
But
anyone that applies for school choice, we accept?
If they fill out the application and they've got other paperwork in, yeah. We can't.
So we had 6 apply this year.
Yeah. Well, you capped it at 5.
Right.
So we accepted 5 of the 6.
So you,
Those, after all of the, after the deadline had passed, the applications were in, and school started, those 5 didn't show up. It is thank you for saying that. If I say it sounds like we're lazy, but it's a lot of work because it involves an interview, it involves transcripts, medical, disciplinary records.
right.
Because you can get suspended a number of times and still enter. Again, if you've got a violent history and you've got felonies, then no.
Right, it's different, yes.
Right. Special education testing, and so you collect all of that information, you give them a tour, because you want them to understand, and the family to understand where they're coming and what they're getting into, and help them get acclimated, because you want them to be successful, and then they opt not to come. It's a principal, a guidance counselor, poor Teresa Minahan, and spending a couple hours on each applicant.
So is there any data out there on, some of this is definitely attributed to, and I think my question is there data out there after a new school is opened? Because I'm sure we're not the only community that experiences this, and the novelty wears off, and it's not a new school, and it's still the same education inside, and the building's not as new. Is there any data? Because school choice isn't a revenue draw for us. So I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering if there's any data. Are we making a premature decision before we really know? I don't know if the other school communities have experienced it.
I think for next year, given that we're going to capture more kids that would have gone to private or social vocational, we're going to be up again next year for that reason. And then with the new housing starts, the only other place you get kids from, to be quite honest with you, is the birth rate the year that, 5 years before they come to kindergarten. And so we've looked at those birth rates, and we know it's fairly steady for Abington, because that's part of the demographic studies we do through a company called NESDEC. So to answer your question, I know I'm very comfortable anticipating we're going to see an increased student population based on the new building, and then likely, because I think it's just common sense, that will taper off. It'll balance out to a new normal, in terms of the rate of kids that leave. There's no way to anticipate construction. This happened because I believe the sewer easements relaxed in Abington. But I think your point is valid. At some point, this increase will taper off, but it won't be next year.
What are our class sizes?
And
for-
each year, you get another vote on this.
Yep.
So,
What are our class sizes right now at the high school? Because really, this is the population it impacts.
so in terms of freshman, sophomore, junior,
Yep.
so the current freshman class has 151. 10th grade has 129. 11th grade has 112. And the 12th grade has 123. Now, the 8th grade,
What does our 8th grade have?
yeah, the 8th grade class coming in is at 168,
And the 7th?
and the 7th is 179. And so if we only have 15% leaving us compared to the 30 that we had, you'd imagine we'd continue to capture 20 more students from each of those classes at Abington High School. So next year's grade 9 is going to be up 20, but you can anticipate that the year after there's going to be 20 more. So now we're at 70 plus. Then next year you're going to have the 20 more coming in. So then you're going to be at, 70 and 20 is going to be 90 more than what we had last year just at the high school alone. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Peter, what grade are the two choice students in now?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you
Okay.
off the top of my head. Sorry. You got to be
But this is a question that we
sophomore,
revisit.
junior, maybe.
This is a question that we revisit every year. So what we're looking at now is to make a determination for next year, and then next year it's something that will be revisited again. And you have to make a decision whether to opt in or opt out of.
And I don't need to ask you for a decision tonight. I didn't mean to throw this at you in one meeting. We've got plenty of time to get a decision on this. I just, schools mark October to October in terms of their numbers. So knowing these numbers, I figured we'd start the conversation.
Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
Does the committee feel comfortable in voting on this tonight, or do you want to postpone it to next meeting?
I would rather postpone it and get more data.
Okay. Anyone else?
Fine by me. Yep, that's
All
fine.
right, so we'll postpone it and have a vote on this for our next meeting. All right, now we need to vote to go back into our regular session.
I'll make that vote. Or do I just say yes? Okay. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
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 okay, so we are now going back into our regular meeting. And we are looking at the review of the proposed MCAS resolutions for 2017. At the last meeting, Jeanette volunteered me to represent the committee at the conference again this year. You have a sheet in your packet with all of the resolutions that are going to be proposed and voted on at the conference this year. And what we usually do is go through them, and you let me know how you want me to vote for you. Keeping in mind that at the conference, wording can get changed and amended. So I like to have a little leeway if the proposal changes a little bit. So I won't read the whole thing through because that would take us much too long. Resolution 1 was movement of the Chapter 70 funding enrollment date to March 15th. And I'm not going to read everything behind it, but the actual resolution is, therefore be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees file for and support legislation that will implement the movement of the Chapter 70 funding enrollment date to March 15th. The rationale is giving the districts the ability to base their budget on the enrollment rate after the peak enrollment time will allow districts to base their budget with increased accuracy to meet the needs of their student population. Underfunding leaves students at risk to fall behind due to not having the appropriate staffing, technology, or needed educational materials. Smaller districts will be more at risk as their admission rate may not reach the required 100 students proposed in House Bill 2846 in 2017 and will be least able to absorb the additional costs of unfunded students. For larger districts, the proposed unfunded student reserve fund will still leave them underfunded as the amount proposed to be set aside will not meet the needs of the students across the state.
So in going through this, the cutoff date currently is March 1st?
It's currently October 1.
I'm sorry, October 1.
I'm not reading it from this, I'm just reading it from knowing.
Yeah.
That's why I put those numbers
The
together.
October 1st reports
Because I'm past October 1st.
to your enrollment.
So this asserts, their argument is this would improve funding for schools. So
Because we'd have a more accurate read on what your population is and what their needs are.
their research, which isn't included here, is that those are that's the peak time. And with, as Jeanette was asking earlier, with the students come dollars. So then you get more money.
This is being proposed by the Framingham School Committee. A number of them are from Framingham. Some of them are from the MASC board. So, those of you who feel I should vote in favor of this change?
I think it's advantageous for us to
Yes,
do that,
I do
yes.
too.
All right, is there anyone opposed to that?
No.
Okay. Okay, moving on to Resolution 2, the reform of circuit breaker funding. This again was submitted by the Framingham School Committee. Therefore, it is resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees file for and support legislation that will support the provision of reform for circuit breaker funding and support the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The rationale, according to MAAPS 2012 bottom line report between 2006 and 2012, special education costs in Massachusetts increased by 56% compared to 36% for all public education. And that's what circuit breaker money is. Anyone have any questions, comments? All right, those of you who want me to vote in favor of it?
I think we should,
Understood.
I'm sorry.
No,
All right,
I was
did
just
you
going
have
to say.
something?
No, I was going to, I'm a yes, I was just
Okay.
throwing out. I think it would be beneficial
Yeah,
for
that makes
us,
sense.
ourselves.
All right, anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Resolution 3, litigation for fair finance, again submitted by Framingham School Committee. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, through its delegate assembly, authorize the Board of Directors to, 1, reassess the need for a new round of litigation to secure funding to guarantee an adequate appropriation of funds, and 2, assess the viability of a lawsuit to secure such funding, and 3, join with other parties at interest to plan and file such a lawsuit if it is determined that there is likelihood of success, and 4, that the Board of Directors shall be authorized to use the reserves of the association to help underwrite the cost of such litigation. There was one section up above that might help you in thinking of this, is based on the findings of the Foundation Budget Review Commission and the Census of Public Educators across Massachusetts, state financial assistance to support a standard of adequacy sufficient to meet the Massachusetts constitutional standard as determined in the McDuffie case is lacking. And that's why they're proposing this.
So if I read through this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, you have more information, I think, than we do. This would be the third attempt, correct?
Yes. There was one case that was won, and they're referring to that as the McDuffie Driscoll case, but it has been found that we are still not meeting adequacy as it was determined.
That looks like that McDuffie case was in 1993.
Yeah, it was a long one.
Yeah.
That's what actually led to ed reform. And every form was supposed to make things adequate and even. And some progress was made at that time, and then everything backed off again later. Anyone else have a question, or?
I think in past discussions, the foundation budget has never really been fair to all communities. It's been
Right.
more than fair to some.
MASC advocated for a review of the foundation budget, and they did have a foundation budget review committee, but they haven't implemented all of the findings of that. Sarah, how do you feel?
I think we should.
All right,
Vote
is there
yes.
anyone opposed to supporting this one? Okay. Right. Number 4, privatization of public education and the oversight of public schools, including small and regional districts. This was submitted by the MASC Board of Directors. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, recognizing the provisions of the state constitution, oppose any state or federal legislative initiative to authorize the use of state funds for education to subsidize the tuition or costs of private schools, except where specifically authorized for students in special education programs or students with disabilities. Further, MASC opposes any state legislative initiative that expands the authority of the Commissioner of Education, the Board of Elementary Education, or the Secretary of Education over schools and school districts beyond those already imposed, and that MASC further opposes the alteration or conversion of any school or district status beyond that permitted by current law without the consent of the city, town, or region in which the school or district is located. There's a little extra information having to do with this. MASC supports the protection of small and rural school districts from modifications in their governance format and regional structure without the consent of the member communities, and further supports recognizing the special financial requirements of these often geographically large and difficult to access parts of the state. In the western part of the state, there are a lot of very small districts that have been receiving a lot of pressure to regionalize without consent of their local school committees. So that, I think, is part of the impetus for this particular resolution. Any other questions? All right. Do you feel we should support or oppose this, support this resolution?
I feel that we should support it.
Yeah.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Just one quick question on this.
Yep.
At the federal level, the state wouldn't have any say anyways, would they? I don't know, Felicia, I don't know if you can answer that, or...
Oh, in terms of the federal tax credit? No, but I think no, they wouldn't. But I think as a state that's a leader in the country in education, they have a voice at the table.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this resolution really is going to, like Kathy said, the small districts, privatization of those, they can give those students vouchers to go someplace else as opposed to having to run the school district. Privatization.
It's about local control.
Yeah, very strongly about local control. All right, are we all set on that one? Mm-hmm. Okay. Resolution 5, use of federal funds, and this again was submitted by the MASC Board of Directors. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC urges the legislature to restrict the ability of the Commissioner, Secretary of Education, or Board of Elementary Education to take for its own purposes or use by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, such as, but not limited to, administrative overhead of the state agency, any share of funds disbursed by the federal government under ESSA, the Perkins Vocational Technical Education Act, or programs under the oversight of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and further that those funds be directed specifically to the schools and school districts. So as part of the law, they can take administrative money out of the grant that comes through. And this is basically saying, send the money to the school that it's
Allocated for.
supposed, allocated for, thank you. So how many, anyone have any questions, first of all? All right, who is
Yes.
in favor of supporting this?
I support it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 6, again, we're looking at the foundation budget. This was initiated by the Worcester School Committee, but sponsored by the MASC Board of Directors. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC calls upon the legislature to enact the recommendations of the foundation budget into law, and further, that the legislature order the commission to reconvene in order to conduct further deliberations and make such recommendations as the FBRC may propose, and further, that the FBRC shall address and make recommendations toward the overall accuracy of the adequacy of the overall foundation budget. And FBRC refers to the Foundation Budget Review Commission. Anyone have any questions on that one?
I feel that we should support that.
Okay. Anyone opposed to supporting that one? Nope, okay. Finally, the last one, Resolution 7, Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. Before I read the resolution part of it, one thing you probably would be interested in is the Medicaid program reimburses public school districts for certain clinical services provided to students who may be clients of special education or experience disabilities, and this revenue provides critical support to the districts and municipalities where they are based. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC urges the Congress to preserve the Affordable Care Act and its expansion of Medicaid programs for the states, and further, MASC urges the General Court to require that 100% of Medicaid reimbursements to cities and towns be provided in the full amount to the public schools of each municipality to underwrite the cost of providing an adequate education. Does anyone have any questions on this one?
No, but I think we should go forth and support it.
Anyone opposed to that?
No.
Okay. That takes care of our resolutions for this year. All right, moving on, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services. Dimpna could not be here this evening, so Peter is going to take over her
So,
report.
thank you. Dr. Thomas is with Dr. Sullivan at the National Youth Risk Conference in Texas. They are presenting on student emotional health and exposing a responsibility gap. So they're presenting on a national level, which is pretty exciting, which is why she's not here tonight. And so under her section, Dimpna was excited to report to you that we have a Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And in your packet, you have the announcement of our chairperson, Jane Coyle, our vice chairperson, Amy Kelstrand, and the secretary, Harla Meneses. And so that committee will be working with Dimpna throughout the year. And I know that people are excited to be involved in it, and it's healthy for us to have parents involved in it and as a part of that Parent Advisory Council to us. So I appreciate that those people are willing to give us their time to work on this.
This is something that Dimpna has been working hard to try to get people who would be willing to do that. So thank you to our new volunteers.
I also have a professional development update for you. Our theme at this upcoming professional development will continue to be technology, the implementation of best practice use, and increasing our level of sophistication in making the experience more personal and exciting, and at the same time challenging for our students. The goal is really to get our students demonstrating what they know or are able to do in their assignments using technology, because that's when you know the students really are critical thinkers and problem solvers, when they're using it. But it goes both ways. It goes both in how the teachers are using it to deliver and process information with students, but then back, again, the end goal is to get the students to use the technology to process information and deliver it back in a thoughtful way to our teachers and our assignments. So we're continuing with that at our next professional development service day. And I also have, under this section, an additional home education request included in your packet. I ask for your consideration of that.
So we'll be looking for a motion to approve the additional home education request for the 2017-2018 school year as recommended by Deb McDomas.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance.
Thank you. I have for your consideration the, pains me, FY19 budget development and planning schedule. Feels like we just get started and we're talking about next year. So in here, you'll see the calendar of events, or the highlighted events that happen between now and town meeting. Of note, budget packets were sent out to principals, department heads, directors this past week, and we'll be starting to meet with them the beginning of December to put together a budget packet presentation, which will be done on the January 2nd school committee meeting. We'll be presenting our preliminary, or presenting to the preliminary FY19 school department budget. We are also, Peter and I will be meeting with the finance team at Town Hall in the coming weeks to start the discussions around kind of the state of the town and where our budget is. We have a motion to approve the FY 2019 school department budget development and article planning schedule.
Does anyone have any questions for Alicia? All right. Then we're looking for a motion to, was there a question? Yes.
No, I was going to say I'll make
You
a
might
motion.
make the motion.
Okay, so Chris has made the motion to approve the FY 2019 school department budget development and article planning schedule as presented. We have a second from?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one other piece to our discussion around pickup at Beaverbrook, and one was at our last meeting. There was a question around North River vans and taking up some parking, and I was able to identify there were actually 5 additional North River vans there that I had actually sent down there. They're part of the community-based vocational program that is using space at the Frollo, and thinking that that would help the situation at the Frollo created more of a problem at the Beaverbrook. So at the end of the day, they were moving the vans to Beaverbrook, but the end of their day was prior to the end of the Beaverbrook day. So those vans are now being housed at the Frollo. So I was able to, after we moved those vans, and was able to observe a number of afternoon dismissals, and there were, at any given time, always some parking for parent pickup. So hopefully that has continued to improve as well. Building update. Lots of happening outside. I can talk a little bit about what's happening inside first, then we'll move to outside. So like we talked about last time, we're in the punch list. So we still have the commissioning agent working with us on HVAC and heating. And this is the most, it's a little stuffy and warm in here tonight, and this is the most difficult time to be working on HVAC and heating issues when you have 70-degree days at the end of October, and then you have 30-degree days 2 weeks, 40-degree days 2 weeks ago. So the system is kind of in a weird situation right now. So, but we are working with both the commissioning agent and the programmer around those. It feels like this is the weather's fabulous, but it does make it difficult to do commissioning on the heating, and then hope that when in a couple weeks we know we will have 20 and 30-degree days, that will be up and running. But all the boilers are working and the chillers are working, so it's just getting set points correct. And we joke that don't we wish we were back to like, here you open a valve, now you have heat, and now you don't, because there are hundreds of valves and miles of piping and electronics that control every last piece. So there's also a learning curve on our part, and so I have to say that Jamie, I can never say her last name, Hoggy is the head custodian here, is doing a fabulous job with Jason Lynn around learning the systems, and I'm very appreciative of that. So the second thing is the signage contractor is starting to finish up the signage, and you can see we have our wall and library is complete. The Hall of Fame dedication and history walk has been put up down by the Auditorium and Fitness Center. There's recycling signs around, so they've been in, and those are starting to take shape around the building as well. We mentioned outside, we mentioned that we have mid-November is when we're anticipating the asphalt for the final parking lot and new roadways coming into the building. Those are scheduled right now for mid-October.
November.
I mean November, October. Yeah, it is November.
It is.
Mid-November, and that's always weather permitting. But the weather this fall has been so fabulous that they've been able to get a lot done. So much done, in fact, that today they were hydro-seeding the new grass field out in front.
Go to my house.
Which is amazing. Peter also mentioned that we met last week for about 3 hours, observed the middle school and high school drop-off in the morning, and talked to the traffic engineers around movement of vehicles throughout the site. And they had some recommendations for us, and they will be putting those in paper, and it includes some changing of site signage. So part of once the parking lot's complete and we have the traffic analysis and study and an agreement of how we're going to move through the site, then we'll have the signage updated. And signs that say preschool pickup that are facing the wrong way will be facing right, and do not enter will be more prominent in those places. So the contractor is anticipating demobilizing the site contractor by the end of November, which means the end of November, what we'll have left is punch list, which just want to remind everybody that will be a year, still a year early, a year and a month early than when anticipated, or 6 months early, 6 months early, and a month. So yeah, it's very exciting. There will be, people have asked about some fencing along Glenowitz around the fields. There will be fencing around the fields. And there will be 3 growing seasons before the fields can be used. So if the hydroseed that was put out there today catches, that would be considered 1. Spring would be 2, fall would be 3. So a year from the springtime, if this catches, then we could be on the field. There is, if you've watched anything happening out on those front areas, that the underground drainage system for the parking lot is being put in, as well as the irrigation system that we had prior at the old high school complex. There is an irrigation system for using the well, same well, for the grass out front. So we are under budget and way on time.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Anyone have any questions for Felicia? No, just please. Okay, establishment of the next school committee meeting date, Tuesday, November 28th, 2017, at 7 p.m. at the Abington Middle High School Library. Peter?
Couple of informational items. First, I'll do the dates to remember. October 31st is the Professional Development Day, no school. The first, Wednesday, November 1st, Friday, November 3rd, is the MASC-MASS Joint Conference. Wednesday, November 1st, is the Green Wave Boosters meeting here at 7 p.m. On Wednesday, November 8th, we have our National Honor Society induction ceremony at the high school in the auditorium at 6:30 p.m. I think you got a separate cover on that. On the 10th, we have a Veterans Day. There'll be different not celebrations, but ceremonies marking the occasion in the school buildings prior to that day, depending on the grade level in the school. On Wednesday, November 22nd, we have a half-day. Thanksgiving break begins. On Thursday and Friday, November 23rd and 24th, the school buildings and offices will be closed. On the 28th of November, it's our next school committee meeting here in the high school library.
And did you have anything else?
Teresa, do we have that letter?
Yes, they all have it.
Okay. So I am proud and I'm pleased to announce that Abington High School has been recognized by the Commissioner of Education as one of 7 schools in the Commonwealth for performance on this last round of MCAS. Thanks. Thank you. And so I gave you a copy of the letter that I wrote to Dr. Sullivan that I also sent out because this congratulatory letter to Dr. Sullivan is really a threefer. It certainly congratulates her and the high school for their high levels of academic success. So Massachusetts is leading the nation when we're ranked as a nation across the industrialized world. We score in the top 10. So it's an easy argument to make that Abington students are getting a world-class education. Of those level 1 school systems, only 7 were recognized in the Commonwealth. Abington High School is one of them. And as I note in this letter, we're a pre-kindergarten through grade 12 system. The students that are here at the high school weren't born the morning before they took the test. We work together as a team and people work very hard for our kids here in Abington, pre-K through 12. So it's also congratulations to them. And more than anything else, it's about the students that we serve. This is only one indicator of success, but it is an indicator that we are best preparing them for the challenges of life after high school, whatever those challenges might be. So I wanted to highlight that here tonight.
And I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the quarterly report. You have a quarterly report in here from both Reach Collaborative and from North River Collaborative. And I'd like you to I'd like to draw your attention to the back of the one from North River Collaborative. The last section on here says upcoming meetings. And in the past, school committee representatives made up the board of directors, and I think you might remember last year that we voted that we would turn that responsibility over to the superintendents. However, there was always a superintendent's advisory committee meeting and a curriculum advisory committee meeting, as well as the board meeting. So they've changed the structure. The superintendents and now the board of directors is advisory meetings for the curriculum coordinators, and there's advisory meetings for the school committee liaisons, so that the people within the town, within the community, are aware of everything that's going on at North River Collaborative. Their meetings are at 4 o'clock on Monday, November 27th, March 12th, and June 21st. So it would be helpful if there was someone willing to be the school committee liaison to North River Collaborative for this year. So if anyone is interested in doing that, if they could contact me so that I can let them know who will be coming.
So additionally, I just want to point out to you, so I just told you how well we did in the MCAS tests. And in your packet, there are talking points from DESE about the MCAS results. What Massachusetts did as a state is it raised their benchmarks, their cut points. So what was advanced before, they raised the bar on that. So people are going to be getting their scoring reports soon. They're going to be delivered to your houses. And because they raised that band where advanced and proficient are, advanced, proficient, and warning and needs improvement, your students, you may not feel that your students did as well as they did in previous years, but what they did is they raised the bar. They made it more difficult to get into advanced. So your student may have actually learned more, but they made advanced harder to get into. And the reason that they did that is because they want Massachusetts to continue to be the nation's leader in testing, so in achievement. So this is going to impact grades 3 through 8. It does not impact the high school scores. The high school is still being scored the way that they have in previous years. And so we may get questions about that from people, and so I want to include that in the packet for you. And then the last piece, and I lost Danielle Grafton, who worked so hard with the Abington Education Foundation, so do others, but she was sitting right here. I just wanted to publicly thank the Abington Education Foundation for the grants. Over $21,000 have been provided in grants, and those are exciting and wonderful, educationally important things that go on in our schools provided by the AEF. And you can see a list here of the different projects that they're underwriting for us. Again, making school more enjoyable and exciting, and still, grounded in education for our students. So I want to make sure you have that in the packet.
Can we go directly to the AEF just to look at the proposals and everything that have been submitted here and approved? Sure. There was just a couple. I had the weather bug station and then the allergy one were the ones I was interested in. So should I go directly to the teacher if I have questions?
So you're looking to have more information about that?
Yes.
I can get you.
Yeah, I'm the allergy one.
Okay.
I have copies in my office as well of all the grants.
If there's a question on that.
No, my daughter grew up with peanut and everything else type of allergies, so I was just seeing it.
It's an amazing program. We've been doing it for years at Center School, funded by the PTO. And with the move this year and all of the funding getting moved around, it occurred to me that perhaps I should ask AEF. And they were kind enough to fund 2/3 of it, and the Beaverbrook PTO funded the other. But Childhood's amazing.
They're very developmentally appropriate presenter for the cage, so he makes it fun
Music,
and silly, but
puppets.
still with very crucial information that's at their level. So I think coming into a public school, some of them don't realize how dire the situation is. And so it's really good to have it, especially at the beginning of the year. A lot of talent to be with.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, anything they? All right, then I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, sorry?
Sorry, guys.
To go to executive session.
I'll make it quick.
So, yeah. Yes? Not to